They say blood is thicker than water, but what they don't tell you is how quickly family can turn that blood into poison. 3 months ago, I was living my dream life in Seattle with my husband Tom, running our successful photography studio. Today, I'm fighting to keep the house that I spent 15 years paying for, all because my mother-in-law believes her precious son deserves to own it, even though he walked out on our marriage for his 23-year-old yoga instructor. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Name is Rachel Chen, and I never thought I'd be sitting in a lawyer's office at 42, clutching property documents and trying to prove that my life's work belongs to me. But here we are, and let me tell you how this nightmare began, how the perfect life I built came crashing down around me because of one family's sense of entitlement. It was a rainy Thursday in March, typical Seattle weather, and I was in our home studio, editing photos from a wedding shoot we'd done the previous weekend. Our house, a beautiful Craftsman in Queen Anne that I'd bought before I even met Tom, had the perfect north-facing windows for photography. I'd spent years renovating every inch of this place, turning it from a worn-down historical home into a masterpiece that perfectly balanced classic charm with modern functionality. The sunroom, with its wall of windows and original leaded glass, had been transformed into a state-of-the-art studio space, complete with professional lighting and backdrop systems. This was my sanctuary, the place where I'd built my business, from the ground up. I remember looking around that morning, feeling proud of how far I'd come from my early days as a struggling photographer. The vintage hardwood floors I'd restored myself gleamed in the soft morning light. The walls, now gallery, white, displayed my favorite works, moments I'd captured over the years that told stories of love, joy, and celebration. Even the garden, visible through the rain-streaked windows, was a testament to my dedication, with its carefully curated mix of native Pacific Northwest plants providing the perfect backdrop for outdoor shoots. Tom and I had met 12 years ago, at an art gallery opening in downtown Seattle. He was showcasing his landscape photographs, and I was there covering the event for a local lifestyle magazine. We clicked instantly, sharing the same passion for capturing life's perfect moments through our lenses. He loved my drive and ambition. I loved his artistic eye and gentle spirit. Within a year, we were married in a small ceremony in my backyard, the same backyard where we'd later photograph countless couples starting their own love stories. When I suggested we combine our talents to create Chen Harrison Photography, it seemed like the perfect merger of our personal and professional lives. The business took off, becoming one of Seattle's most sought-after wedding photography studios. We complemented each other perfectly, my attention to detail and business acumen paired with Tom's creative vision and charm. We were the power couple of the Seattle wedding photography scene, and I thought we had it all. That Thursday started like any other. The rain tapped steadily against the windows as I worked through the Henderson wedding photos. Jessica Henderson had been a dream client, a laid-back bride who trusted our artistic vision completely. I was deep into editing their first dance shots when my phone buzzed. Eleanor Harrison, my mother-in-law's name, flashed across the screen. I felt that familiar knot form in my stomach, the one that had been appearing more frequently since. Tom moved out 3 months ago. Eleanor had never quite approved of me, despite her polite facade. I was Chinese-American, self-made, and worst of all, in her eyes, I hadn't changed my last name after marriage. The Harrisons were old Seattle money, with roots tracing back to the city's lumber baron days. They lived in a mansion on Mercer Island and treated their family name like a crown jewel that needed constant polishing. I'd spent 12 years trying to prove myself worthy of their precious son, only to have him leave me for Amber, his yoga instructor who was barely out of college. I hesitated before answering the phone, taking a deep breath to center myself. "Hello, Eleanor," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral and professional. "Rachel, dear." Eleanor's voice dripped with artificial sweetness, the kind that always made my teeth ache. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Though I suppose art can wait when family matters need discussing. That subtle dig, reducing my professional work to mere art, was classic Eleanor. She'd never seen photography as a real career, despite the fact that our studio grossed nearly $500,000 the previous year. Just editing the Henderson wedding, I replied, refusing to take the bait. What can I help you with? Well, I've been thinking about the house situation, she said, as if we'd been in the middle of an ongoing discussion. Now that Tom's going through this phase, don't you think it's time to consider what's fair? The way she said phase made my blood boil. Tom hadn't had a phase. He'd had an affair, fallen in love with someone else, and walked out on our marriage. But Eleanor had never been one to let reality interfere with her preferred narrative. I felt my stomach tighten as I asked, "What do you mean by fair, Eleanor?" What followed was a conversation that would mark the beginning of the end of my peaceful life. Eleanor laid out her vision of fairness, a vision that involved me signing over my house to her son because, in her words, it's become a Harrison family business asset. She spoke with the entitled confidence of someone who'd never heard the word no in her life, laying claim to 15 years of my hard work as if it were nothing more than a family heirloom that needed to be returned to its rightful owners. That evening, after ending the call with shaking hands, I walked through my home with new eyes. Every corner held memories, both beautiful and painful. The kitchen where Tom and I had danced after booking our first high-profile wedding. The office where we'd stayed up late planning our business expansion. The bedroom where, 3 months ago, he told me he'd fallen in love with someone else. Pulled out my phone and called my best friend, Lisa Martinez, who happened to be a real estate attorney. We'd met in college, two ambitious women with big dreams, and she'd been my rock through every up and down since then. "Lisa," I said, my voice cracking slightly, "I need your advice. I just had the strangest conversation with Eleanor." As I recounted the call, Lisa's silence spoke volumes. Finally, she said, "Rachel, this isn't just strange, it's concerning. The Harrisons have a history of getting what they want, one way or another. I've seen families like them operate in my practice. They don't take no for an answer, and they have the resources to make life very difficult for anyone who stands in their way." That night, I pulled out every document related to the house. The original purchase agreement from 15 years ago, all the renovation permits, the business license showing the residential studio registration. I spread them across my dining room table, creating a paper trail of my life's work. But as I sat there, surrounded by legal proof of my ownership, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Because when old money collides with family loyalty, the truth becomes just another bargaining chip. And the Harrisons were about to show me exactly how far they'd go to get what they believed was rightfully theirs, even if it meant destroying the person who had once been part of their family. The next few days left me feeling uneasy, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened at the annual Seattle Photography Awards. The event was being held at the historic Fairmont Olympic Hotel, where hundreds of the city's top photographers gathered to celebrate the industry's achievements. I almost didn't go. The thought of potentially running into Tom was enough to make my stomach churn. But I'd been nominated for Best Wedding Portfolio, and Lisa convinced me I couldn't let personal drama keep me from professional recognition. The grand ballroom sparkled with elegant chandeliers and the chatter of Seattle's creative elite. I wore my favorite black silk jumpsuit, a pre-divorce purchase that now felt like armor. As I made my way through the crowd, colleagues stopped to chat, their eyes holding that mixture of sympathy and curiosity that I'd grown accustomed to since Tom left. "Rachel Chen?" A young man in a sharp suit approached me, tablet in hand. "I'm Marcus Wong from Seattle Style Magazine. We'd love to feature your work in our upcoming wedding issue. Your recent editorial shoots have been extraordinary." Before I could respond, a familiar voice cut through the conversation like ice. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Actually, those shoots were a joint effort of Chen Harrison Photography. My son Tom was instrumental in developing that signature style. Eleanor Harrison stood there in her perfectly tailored Chanel suit, a champagne flute delicately poised in her manicured hands. She wasn't even supposed to be at this event. This was an industry gathering, not a social one. But there she was, clearly ready to make her presence known. Marcus looked confused, glancing between us. Oh, I was particularly interested in the Morrison wedding series. The underwater shots were incredible. That was entirely my work, I said firmly, my heart pounding. I've been specializing in underwater photography for the past 3 years. Tom wasn't involved in those shoots. Eleanor's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. Oh, darling, don't be modest. Everything in Chen Harrison Photography was a team effort. That's why it's so important to maintain the business integrity now, despite personal changes. I watched as she smoothly steered Marcus away, already weaving her narrative about the family business. My hands were shaking so badly I had to set down my drink. This wasn't just about the house anymore. She was trying to rewrite my professional history. As I headed for the bathroom to compose myself, I overheard snippets of conversations that made my blood run cold. I heard Tom's mother is taking over the business management. Apparently, Rachel's been using the Harrison name to book clients. Such a shame about the studio ownership dispute. In the elegant marble bathroom, I splashed cold water on my face, careful not to smudge my makeup. That's when I heard the door open and close, followed by the click of expensive heels on tile. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Rachel. Eleanor's reflection appeared in the mirror beside me. Tom's father and I have been talking to some of our old family friends. Did you know Judge Matthews's daughter is getting married next spring? She was considering your services. But now, the threat was clear. The Harrisons were going to use their social connections to strangle my business. I turned to face her, finding strength I didn't know I had. Are you actually threatening to destroy my reputation because I won't give up my house? Destroying things is such an ugly phrase. Eleanor adjusted her pearl necklace. We're simply protecting our family's interests. The Chen Harrison brand was built on our son's talent and our family's connections. The house is as much a part of that legacy as the business itself. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Lisa. Check your email now. Something's happening with your business license. Eleanor's slight smile told me she already knew what I was about to find out. I rushed out of the bathroom, barely maintaining my composure as I found a quiet corner to open my email. There it was. A notice from the city about a formal complaint filed against my home-based business license, citing zoning violations and noise complaints from concerned neighbors. The Harrisons lived nowhere near me, but I knew they had friends in my neighborhood. Friends who would happily file complaints if asked by the right people. As I stood there staring at my phone in disbelief, I heard the announcement that the Best Wedding Portfolio Award was about to be presented. Through the roaring in my ears, I heard my name called as the winner. The crowd applauded as I mechanically made my way to the stage. Rachel Chen, for her groundbreaking underwater wedding series and innovative use of natural light, the presenter announced. As I accepted the Crystal Award, I saw Eleanor in the audience, whispering to a group of industry veterans. My moment of professional triumph was being overshadowed by her careful orchestration of my downfall. Back at my table, I found a handwritten note waiting for me. Congratulations on your win. Perhaps now would be a good time to discuss a smooth transition of assets. E.H. The award felt heavy in my hands, a symbol of my success that was somehow being twisted into evidence of what the Harrisons believed they were owed. I gathered my things, ready to leave, when I spotted Tom across the room. He was standing with his yoga instructor turned girlfriend, Amber, looking uncomfortable in his suit. Our eyes met briefly, and I saw something flicker across his face: guilt, concern. But he quickly looked away as his mother approached them. Outside, the Seattle rain had turned into a heavy downpour. As I waited for my Uber, I overheard two photographers talking nearby. "I heard the Harrisons are planning to rebrand the whole business," one said. "Apparently, they're reaching out to all the major wedding venues about an exclusive partnership. But what about Rachel Chen? She's been the primary photographer for years." "Well, you know how these things go. Family businesses always stay in the family." I wanted to scream that it wasn't a family business. It was my business, my house, my life's work. But I was beginning to realize that the truth mattered less than perception, and Eleanor Harrison was a master at shaping perception. By the time I got home, I had 3 more emails about concerned neighbor complaints and a voice message from the wedding venue where I had 4 bookings scheduled, asking to discuss our ongoing partnership. The Harrisons weren't just trying to take my house. They were systematically dismantling everything I'd built, piece by piece. As I sat in my dark kitchen, clutching my meaningless award, I realized this was war. And if Eleanor Harrison wanted to play dirty, she was about to learn that she wasn't the only one who could fight for what was hers. I picked up my phone and called Lisa. "Remember when you said I needed to document everything? I think it's time we went on the offensive." Lisa's words kept echoing in my head as I dug through old business records in my home office. "Follow the money, Rachel. Rich families always leave a paper trail." It had been 3 days since the photography awards disaster, and I was determined to understand exactly what I was up against. Something about Eleanor's confidence didn't sit right. She was too sure of herself, even for a Harrison. The morning light filtered through my office windows as I sorted through years of business. Documents, tax returns, and bank statements. Coffee cups littered my desk, testament to another sleepless night. That's when I noticed something odd in an old contract from 2 years ago. A significant payment from Harrison Enterprises to Chen Harrison Photography that I had no recollection of processing. My hands trembled as I pulled up our business banking records. There it was, a series of large deposits from Harrison Enterprises, all marked as equipment investment. But we had never received any equipment from them. In fact, I'd always made a point of keeping our business separate from Harrison family money, despite their repeated offers to invest. A knock at the door startled me from my investigation. Through the security camera, I saw my former assistant, Maya Rodriguez, shifting nervously on my porch. I hadn't seen her since she abruptly quit 3 months ago, right around the time Tom left. "Maya." I opened the door, noting how uncomfortable she looked. "What brings you here?" She glanced over her shoulder before stepping inside. "I've been trying to work up the courage to tell you something. After seeing what happened at the awards ceremony, I can't stay quiet anymore." In my kitchen, Maya's hands wrapped around a mug of tea as she began to speak. About 4 months ago, before everything happened with Tom, I overheard a conversation between him and his mother. I was staying late to finish editing the Zhang wedding photos. My heart pounded as Maya continued. They were in the studio, and Eleanor was saying something about everything being in place, and how the transfers would look legitimate once the separation was final. I didn't understand what it meant at the time, but Tom seemed upset. He kept saying there had to be another way. "That's why you quit?" I asked, pieces starting to fall into place. Maya nodded, tears in her eyes. "The next week, I found documentation on Tom's computer, backdated contracts and equipment receipts from Harrison Enterprises. They were creating a paper trail to make it look like they'd been financially supporting the business all along. I couldn't be part of it, but I was too scared to tell you. The Harrisons, they have so much influence in this city." I pulled out my laptop, showing Maya the deposits I'd just discovered. "Are these the transfers you saw documentation for?" Her face paled. "There's more, much more. They've been quietly transferring funds through multiple channels, creating a complex web of business relationships. Eleanor has been planning this for over a year, laying the groundwork to claim that Harrison family money built this business. My mind raced. The equipment we'd bought last year, top-of-the-line cameras and lighting systems, had been purchased through a new vendor I didn't usually work with. Had that been part of their plan too? Rachel, Maya's voice was barely a whisper. There's something else. The week before Tom left, I saw him shredding documents in the office. Personal documents, not business ones. They looked like property papers. I rushed to my filing cabinet, pulling out my home ownership records. Everything seemed in order, but something made me look closer at the dates. That's when I saw it. Subtle discrepancies in the paperwork, as if some pages had been replaced with nearly identical copies. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Check public records for any recent changes to your properties. Title history. A friend. With shaking hands, I pulled up the county property records website. What I found made my blood run cold. There was a recent amendment to my property's title history, dated just weeks before Tom left. It listed Harrison Enterprises as having a security interest in the property due to business investments and improvements. They've been laying a trap, I said, more to myself than to Maya. Creating a false paper trail to make it look like Harrison money paid for both the business and the house improvements. Maya pulled out her phone, scrolling through old photos. I took pictures of some of the documents before Tom shredded them. I was scared I might need proof someday. Look at this. The photos showed a systematic plan to create the illusion of Harrison family investment in both the business and property. There were drafted legal documents, fake equipment receipts, and even a proposal for rebranding Chen Harrison Photography as simply Harrison Photography. Why are you showing me this now? I asked Maya. She squared her shoulders. Because yesterday, Eleanor Harrison came to see me. She offered me a job, a really good job, at their new photography studio, said they were consolidating family assets and wanted to keep loyal employees. It made me sick, knowing what I know. As Maya left, promising to email me copies of everything she had documented, I sat in my kitchen feeling like I was in free fall. This wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about a carefully orchestrated plan to take everything I'd built. I called Lisa, putting her on speaker as I forwarded her the property records. They've been playing a long game, I said. Creating a paper trail to make it look like Harrison money built everything. This changes things. Lisa's voice was grim. But it might also be their weakness. Fraudulent documentation leaves traces, and backdated contracts don't hold up well under scrutiny. We need to move fast, though, before they can cover their tracks completely. As I hung up, another text came through from the unknown number. Storage Unit 23, Seattle Storage Solutions, Westlake. Code 4891, more evidence inside. Hurry. I grabbed my keys, ready to drive to the storage facility, when I noticed a car I didn't recognize parked across the street. The driver was trying to look inconspicuous, but failed. I recognized him as one of Eleanor's regular chauffeurs. They were watching me. How long had they been watching me? And more importantly, what else didn't I know about their plans? The truth was unraveling, but I had a sinking feeling that what I'd discovered so far was just the tip of the iceberg. As I backed out of my driveway, making sure the chauffeur was following me, I decided to take a detour before heading to the storage unit. It was time to see exactly how far down this rabbit hole went, and who else might have information about the Harrison scheme. The game had changed. Eleanor thought she was slowly tightening a noose around my life, but she didn't realize that every trap she'd laid was now becoming evidence of something much bigger, and potentially much more damaging to the Harrison family name than a simple property dispute. The storage unit revelation would have to wait. As I pulled into the parking lot of Paradise Valley Yoga Studio, my heart was pounding against my ribs. If Eleanor wanted to play games with surveillance, I could play too. Amber, Tom's new girlfriend, was teaching her usual 2 p.m. class here, and I needed answers before checking out that mysterious storage unit. I'd never actually seen her up close. Before, I'd only caught glimpses of her with Tom at the awards ceremony. The girl who'd supposedly stolen my husband's heart was leading a class through sun salutations when I walked in, her perfect ponytail swinging as she demonstrated poses. She couldn't have looked more different from me, young, blonde, and radiating. That particular brand of West Coast wellness influencer energy. "I'm here for the next class," I told the receptionist, paying the drop-in fee. In the changing room, I caught snippets of conversation between 2 women in expensive athleisure wear. "Can you believe they're closing?" one whispered. Amber was so upset. Apparently the whole building's been bought out. By that development company, right? My husband works in real estate, says they've been buying up properties all over this neighborhood. I pretended to be engrossed in my phone while I listened. The pieces were starting to come together, but not in the way I'd expected. After class, I approached Amber directly. "We need to talk." She nearly dropped her water bottle when she saw me. "Rachel? Oh God, I can't." "It's not what you think," I said, keeping my voice low. "This is about Harrison Enterprises and their recent property acquisitions." The color drained from her face. "How did you—" "Not here. Meet me at Cafe Luna in 20 minutes. The cafe was nearly empty when I arrived. Amber was already there, fidgeting with a green smoothie. Up close, she looked younger than her 23 years, and surprisingly afraid. "I never meant for any of this to happen," she blurted out before I could speak. "I didn't know who Tom was when we met. I didn't know about the plan." "What plan?" "Harrison Enterprises has been buying up properties all through this area. They're planning some huge development project. Luxury condos, high-end retail, the works. Your house, it's right in the middle of their planned development zone." My mind raced. "But they can't force people to sell." "They don't force." Amber's voice was bitter. "They pressure. They manipulate. They create situations where people have no choice. Like what they're doing to this studio. Suddenly, our property taxes triple, mysterious building code violations appear." "And Tom? Where does he fit in all this?" Amber's eyes filled with tears. "Tom was supposed to convince you to sell. Eleanor promised him a position running their new corporate photography division if he could deliver the property. When he couldn't, when he realized he actually had feelings for me, they decided to try a different approach, using you to break up our marriage," I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. "Not exactly." Amber pulled out her phone, showing me a series of texts. "They were already planning to end your marriage. I was just convenient, a distraction while they put everything else in place. But then Tom actually fell for me and everything got complicated." The texts were between Amber and Eleanor dating back 6 months. They showed a calculated plan to use Amber's position at the yoga studio to get close to Tom, to create a scandal that would destabilize our marriage. But somewhere along the way, genuine feelings had developed. "Why are you showing me this now?" "Because last week Tom found out the truth, that I was initially hired by his mother. He left, not just me, but Seattle entirely, and now—" She glanced around nervously. "Now they're threatening to destroy my business, my reputation, everything, just like they're trying to do to you." Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from the unknown number. "Storage unit compromised. Don't go there. Meet at Volunteer Park Water. Tower, 4 p.m. Bring what Amber gives you." Amber was already pulling an envelope from her bag. "Tom left this for you. He wanted you to have proof of what his family's been doing. But Rachel, be careful. The Harrisons, they're not just rich. They're dangerous." The envelope contained a USB drive and a handwritten letter. Before I could open it, I spotted Eleanor's chauffeur entering the cafe. Amber saw him too and quickly stood up. "I have to go. But Rachel, I'm sorry. For everything. And watch out for Jeffrey Harrison." "Tom's uncle? What does he have to do with this?" But Amber was already hurrying out the back door, leaving me with more questions than answers. I slipped the envelope into my bag just as the chauffeur approached my table. "Ms. Chen," he said smoothly, "Mrs. Harrison requests your presence at the family estate. Immediately." "Does she? That's fascinating. And if I refuse?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Mrs. Harrison suggested I remind you about the pending zoning investigation at your property. It would be a shame if the inspectors had to shut down your business during peak wedding season." I stood up slowly, gathering my things. "Tell Mrs. Harrison, I'll be there in an hour. I need to change first." He shook his head. "My instructions are to escort you directly." As I followed him to the waiting town car, my mind was racing. The USB drive felt like it was burning a hole in my bag. Whatever was on it, combined with Amber's revelations, had just transformed this from a simple property dispute into something much bigger. The car wound its way through the city toward Mercer Island. I used the time to send a quick text to Lisa, with my location and what I'd learned. Her response was immediate. "Don't go alone. This is bigger than we thought. Harrison Enterprises is under federal investigation." But it was too late to back out now. As we pulled through the ornate gates of the Harrison estate, I saw Eleanor waiting on the front steps, impeccable as always in her designer suit. Behind her stood a man I recognized as Jeffrey Harrison, Tom's uncle and the head of Harrison Enterprises' legal department. The game had changed again. This wasn't just about my house anymore. I'd stumbled onto something much bigger. And judging by the look on Eleanor's face, she knew exactly what I'd discovered. I stepped out of the car, clutching my bag with the USB drive close. Whatever was about to happen, I had a feeling it would make our previous confrontations look like friendly chats. The question was, who was really pulling the strings in this elaborate scheme? As I walked up the sweeping steps of the Harrison mansion, bile rose in my throat. Not from fear, but from the sheer audacity of what surrounded me. Everything screamed old money and power, from the manicured gardens to the Greek columns flanking the entrance. This was a fortress built on generations of knowing the right people and making things happen. Eleanor's smile was razor-sharp as she extended her hand. "Rachel, darling, how good of you to join us. Though I must say, ambushing." Poor Amber was rather tasteless. Behind her, Jeffrey Harrison stood like a shadow in an expensive suit. I'd only met him a handful of times at family functions, but I remembered how he'd always watched everything with calculating eyes, barely speaking unless necessary. "Shall we take this inside?" Jeffrey's voice was surprisingly soft for such an imposing man. "I believe we have quite a bit to discuss." The foyer opened into a study that could have been transplanted directly from an English manor house, all dark wood and leather-bound books. A massive desk dominated the room, and spread across it were familiar documents: my property deeds, business licenses, and what appeared to be architectural plans. "Please, sit." Eleanor gestured to a leather chair that probably cost more than my first car. I remained standing. "Interesting reading material." I nodded toward the desk. "Though I'm more interested in the contents of that storage unit your people compromised." A flicker of something, concern, crossed Jeffrey's face. Eleanor's smile didn't waver. "Storage unit?" "I'm sure I don't know what you're talking about," she said, moving to pour herself a drink from a crystal decanter. "Scotch?" "What I want to know," I said, ignoring the offer, "is why Harrison Enterprises is so interested in one photographer's house. It seems like an awful lot of effort for a relatively small property." Jeffrey cleared his throat. "Ms. Chen, I corrected. "Ms. Chen," he continued smoothly, "what's happening here is larger than you realize. We're prepared to offer you 3 times your property's market value. A generous settlement that would allow you to relocate your business to any number of more suitable locations." I pulled out my phone and projected an image onto the wood-paneled wall. a map of recent Harrison Enterprises property acquisitions that I'd found in Tom's envelope. Red dots clustered around my neighborhood, forming a perfect circle. My house sat at the center. This isn't about my house, is it? This is about location. You need my property to complete whatever you're planning. Eleanor's hand tightened around her scotch glass. Rachel, you're out of your depth. This is about progress, about developing Seattle's future. Your little home studio, charming as it is standing in the way of a $500 million development project. That's why you created all those fake investment records, I said. You needed to show that Harrison money was already tied to the property. Make any legal challenge look like a family business dispute rather than corporate strong-arming. Jeffrey stepped forward. Those records aren't fake, Ms. Chen. They're simply restructured to reflect the reality of the situation. Your success was built on Harrison connections, Harrison influence. My success was built on talent and hard work, I snapped. Something this family wouldn't understand. Careful, dear. Eleanor's voice carried a warning. You're not the only one with access to interesting documents. It would be a shame if the IRS received evidence of certain irregularities in your business expenses. I laughed, the sound echoing off the wood panels. You mean the irregularities your people created? The same ones documented in Tom's letter? That hit home. Eleanor's composure cracked slightly. Tom contacted you? Tom left evidence, I said, about everything. The property scheme, the fake investments, the planned accidents at other properties that convinced people to sell. He may have been weak enough to go along with your plan at first, but he grew a conscience. Jeffrey moved to stand beside Eleanor. These are serious accusations, Ms. Chen, the kind that could be considered defamatory. And given your immigrant background, I'm sure there are aspects of your early business dealings that might not withstand scrutiny. The casual racism barely surprised me anymore. I'd dealt with the Harrisons' thinly veiled prejudice for years, but something about the way Jeffrey said it made pieces click together in my mind. That's why you really wanted Tom to marry me, isn't it? I said, looking at Eleanor, an up-and-coming photographer with no family connections in Seattle. Someone whose property you could eventually seize control of when it became valuable. I was just a long-term investment. Eleanor's mask slipped completely. Don't flatter yourself. Tom's infatuation with you was inconvenient, but we learned to make it useful. Everything can be turned to advantage with proper planning. And proper planning includes hiring your son's yoga instructor to break up his marriage, creating fraudulent business documents, threatening small business owners. Enough. Jeffrey's soft voice turned hard. You've made your point, Ms. Chen. Now let us make ours. You have 24 hours to accept our offer. After that, things will become difficult. Not just for you, but for everyone you care about. I understand your friend Lisa Martinez has a promising career ahead of her. It would be a shame if certain allegations were to surface. My blood ran cold. They'd been investigating my friends, too. How long had they been planning this? You're right about one thing, I said, pulling out a small digital recorder from my bag. I am out of my depth. That's why I've been recording this entire conversation. Everything you just said about fraud, threats, and retaliation, it's all documented. Eleanor's scotch glass shattered on the hardwood floor. Jeffrey's face turned to stone. You can't prove anything, Eleanor hissed. Maybe not alone, I agreed. But I'm not alone anymore. Tom's evidence, Amber's testimony, Maya's documentation, and now this recording. It's all going to the FBI. They're very interested in Harrison Enterprises development practices. Jeffrey moved toward me, but I was already backing toward the door. You're bluffing. Check your phone, I said. On cue, both their phones buzzed with breaking news alerts. The headline read, FBI launches investigation into Seattle real estate development fraud. You have 24 hours, I said, echoing Jeffrey's threat, to decide how this plays out. You can back off, Let me keep my property, and we'll call it even. Or we can see how the Harrison legacy holds up under federal investigation. As I walked out of that mansion, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely text Lisa. But I'd done it. I'd confronted them on their own turf and survived. The war wasn't over. Far from it. But for the first time since this began, I felt like I had a fighting chance. The Harrisons had power and money, but I had the truth. Now it was their turn to decide how much they were willing to lose to win. The 24 hours I'd given the Harrisons ticked by with excruciating slowness. I spent the night at Lisa's house, knowing my own home wasn't safe. Every passing car made us jump. Every unexpected sound had us checking the security cameras Lisa had installed. But nothing could have prepared us for what happened when the deadline arrived. It wasn't the Harrisons who made the first move. It was Tom. I was reviewing the FBI documentation with Lisa when her security system chimed. There he stood on her porch, looking nothing like the confident photographer I'd been married to. His designer clothes had been replaced by worn jeans and a faded t-shirt. Dark circles rimmed his eyes. "You can't be here," Lisa said through the intercom. "Please," Tom's voice cracked. "They're going to kill me." That got our attention. Lisa and I exchanged glances before she buzzed him in, her hand hovering near the panic button she'd installed. "What do you mean they're going to kill you?" I demanded as he stumbled into her living room. "Uncle Jeffrey, he found out I took copies of everything. The real estate fraud, the shell companies, the offshore accounts. It's not just about the development project anymore. They've been using Harrison Enterprises to launder money for years." He pulled out a laptop from his bag, hands shaking as he opened it. "I've been tracking all their activities since I left. Every property deal, every investment, every shell company. It goes so much deeper than we thought." The screen filled with spreadsheets, documents, and photographs. Property deeds connected to companies that didn't exist. Wire transfers to accounts in countries known for banking secrecy. Meetings with people whose faces I recognized from crime. Documentaries. "That's Vincent Calabrese," Lisa pointed to one photo. "He's been under investigation for organized crime connections for years." Tom nodded grimly. "Harrison Enterprises has been helping certain organizations clean their money through real estate developments. My house, your house, it wasn't just about the property value. They needed it for one of their shell companies, a legitimate business address for some very illegitimate activities." "Why are you telling us this now?" I asked, studying his face for any sign of deception. "Because this morning I found my apartment ransacked and this on my door." He pulled out his phone, showing us a photo of a black rose pinned to his door with a silver dagger. "It's Uncle Jeffrey's signature threat. He used to brag about it at family gatherings. How anyone who crossed him got a black rose as their only warning." Lisa was already on her phone, texting her contact at the FBI. I felt my world tilting on its axis again. Money laundering? Organized crime? This had spiraled far beyond a simple property dispute. "There's more," Tom said, pulling up another document. "Remember that storage unit you were warned about? The reason they compromised it wasn't just to hide evidence. They needed to plant something, make it look like you were involved in their schemes." My blood ran cold. What did they plant? Financial records, doctored photographs. Enough to make it look like you've been knowingly participating in their money laundering operation for years. They're setting you up to take the fall if the FBI investigation gets too close. Lisa's phone buzzed. "My FBI contact wants to meet. Now, they're sending a protective detail." But before we could move, the power went out. All of Lisa's security systems went dark. In the sudden silence, we heard footsteps on the back porch. "Safe room," Lisa whispered, grabbing her laptop. "Now." We barely made it to her reinforced home office before the first window shattered. Through the security monitors running on backup power, we watched 3 men in black tactical gear enter the house. Harrison's private security team. Tom whispered, "Ex-military. They handle the family's problems." Lisa was already transmitting everything from Tom's laptop to her secure cloud storage. I sent a mass email to every journalist and law enforcement contact I had, attaching the recording from my confrontation with Eleanor and Jeffrey. The men were methodically searching the house, getting closer to our hiding spot. Lisa's reinforced door wouldn't hold them forever. "There's a tunnel," Lisa said quietly. "From when this house was used in the Underground Railroad. It leads to the neighbor's basement. They're out of town, but I have their key." "How do you know about that?" I asked. "I research everything, Rachel, especially escape routes. Now move." We slipped into the tunnel just as we heard them reach the office door. Through the earth and concrete, we could hear them trying to breach it. The tunnel was narrow and damp, centuries of Seattle history pressing down on us as we crawled through the darkness. Tom was behind me, his breath coming in short gasps. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I never meant for any of this to happen. I thought I was protecting you by leaving." "You were a coward," I hissed back. "You could have told me the truth." "I know. But they raised me to believe family loyalty was everything. It took falling for Amber, really falling for her, not just following their plan, to make me question everything." We emerged in the neighbor's basement just as we heard a muffled explosion from Lisa's house. They'd breached the safe room. Lisa led us to her neighbor's garage where a car was waiting. "I have multiple escape vehicles staged around the city," she explained as we piled in. "Never trust rich people with secrets." As we drove through the Seattle night, taking a convoluted route to throw off any tail, I thought about how completely my life had transformed. A month ago, I was fighting to keep my house. Now I was fleeing from armed men, carrying evidence of a massive criminal conspiracy. "Where are we going?" Tom asked. "To meet my FBI contact," Lisa said. "But first, we need to make a stop. Rachel's house isn't just property anymore, it's evidence. We need to get there before they do." I clutched my camera bag closer. Inside was a memory card containing years of photographs. Not just weddings and portraits, but accidentally. Documented meetings, suspicious handoffs in the background of shots, faces that now had new meaning. The Harrison Empire was built on appearance, on making illegal things look legitimate. But I was a photographer. I dealt in evidence, in frozen moments of truth. And somewhere in my archives was the proof that could bring it all down. We just had to survive long enough to use it. The rain was pounding against Lisa's car as we sped through Seattle's back streets, taking a maze-like route toward my house. Every shadow seemed to hide a potential threat, every passing car a possible pursuer. But nothing could have prepared me for what we found when we arrived. Through the downpour, we could see lights blazing inside my home. Not just any lights. Professional photography lighting equipment had been set up, visible through the windows. People in suits were moving purposefully through my studio. "They're staging something," Lisa whispered, pulling into a concealed spot 2 houses down. "Making it look like your studio was used for more than wedding photography." Tom's face had gone pale. "This is classic Uncle Jeffrey. He did this to another businessman last year. Turned the guy's legitimate operation into what looked like a front for money laundering. The poor guy is still in federal prison." I pulled out my phone, opened my security app, and felt my heart stop. "The cameras are still working. Listen." Through the security feed, we could hear Eleanor's voice, clear and commanding. "Make sure everything is in place. When the FBI arrives, they need to find evidence of extensive criminal activity. Rachel Chen, the successful wedding photographer, secretly running a massive money laundering operation. It's perfect. Who would suspect all those cash payments? For wedding packages?" Jeffrey's voice joined hers. "The offshore account documents are planted in her filing cabinet. The fake client list is in the computer. What about the safe?" "Already taken care of," a new voice said, one I recognized, as Vincent Calabresi's. My people added the marked bills and the ledgers. When this is done, she'll take the fall for everything. The FBI will be so busy prosecuting her, they'll never look deeper into Harrison Enterprises. I felt sick. They were systematically destroying not just my business, but my entire life. Everything I'd built was being turned into evidence of crimes I'd never committed. "Wait," Lisa said suddenly, squinting through the rain. "Who's that?" A figure in a dark raincoat was slipping around the side of my house, staying in the shadows. "That's Sandra Kim," I breathed. "The real estate reporter who's been investigating Harrison Enterprises. I met her at a charity event last year." We watched as Sandra carefully photographed through windows, documenting everything happening inside. She was gathering evidence of the evidence planting. "This could work in our favor," Lisa said, already typing on her phone. "I'm sending an anonymous tip to every major news outlet in Seattle. Harrison Enterprises caught framing local photographer." With Sandra already on scene, a sudden commotion inside the house caught our attention. Through the security feed, we could hear shouting. "Someone's outside." Jeffrey's voice was sharp. "Find them. We need to get Sandra out of there," I said, reaching for the door handle. But Lisa grabbed my arm. "Wait, look!" Police cars were silently rolling up both ends of the street, lights off. Not just police, FBI vehicles too. Sandra must have called them before starting her documentation. What happened next was like watching a carefully choreographed dance. As Harrison's people rushed out to search for Sandra, they ran straight into federal agents. Eleanor's outraged screams echoed through the night as she was led out in handcuffs. Jeffrey tried to run but made it only 3 steps before being tackled on my front lawn. Vincent Calabresi and his men managed to slip out the back, right into the arms of a waiting SWAT team. "Your FBI contact?" I asked Lisa. She nodded. "I told them everything while we were driving. They've been building a case against Harrison Enterprises for months. This was just the evidence they needed, catching them in the act of framing an innocent person." Sandra Kim approached our car, camera in hand. "Rachel Chen, I've been trying to reach you. I've been documenting Harrison Enterprises' criminal activities for a year. When I heard what they were planning tonight..." "You used yourself as bait," Tom said. "Got them to show their hand." Sandra nodded. "They've done this before, framed innocent people to cover their tracks. But this time we got it all on camera. Photos, videos, audio. They're finished." As we watched the FBI collecting evidence, real evidence this time, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief, certainly. Vindication. But also sadness for what could have been. "I know what you're thinking," Tom said quietly. "And you're right. I should have trusted you from the beginning. Should have told you what my family really was." "Why didn't you?" He stared at the scene unfolding on my front lawn. "Because I was a coward. Because I'd spent my whole life watching them destroy people who crossed them. Because it was easier to follow their plan, marry someone they could eventually control, than stand up to them. And Amber? She was part of their plan at first. But falling for her, that was real. It made me question everything they'd taught me about loyalty and family. She helped me see what they really were." Sandra was still taking pictures as Eleanor was placed in an FBI vehicle. My former mother-in-law caught sight of me and her face contorted with rage. "You'll regret this," she shouted. "Nobody crosses the Harrisons." An FBI agent approached our car. "Ms. Chen, we'll need your statement. And Mr. Harrison, your cooperation could be very valuable in building this case." As we stepped out into the rain, I took one last look at my house. The place I'd fought so hard to keep had become something else entirely. The key to exposing a criminal empire masquerading as old money respectability. "What happens now?" I asked Lisa. She smiled grimly. "Now? Now we make sure every dirty deal, every framed innocent, every corrupt scheme comes to light. The Harrisons thought they could bury you. Instead, you're going to help bury them." The rain was letting up, and in the distance I could see reporters arriving. The story would break by morning, Seattle's elite family exposed as criminals, their elaborate frame job foiled by the very person they'd tried to destroy. Sometimes, I realized losing everything can lead to uncovering something much bigger than yourself. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of FBI interviews, press conferences, and revelations that kept getting darker. I sat in a federal building downtown, surrounded by agents and prosecutors as I recounted every detail of my history with the Harrisons. But the biggest shock came when Agent Sarah Martinez, the lead investigator, spread out a series of photographs across the conference table. "These were taken at your weddings over the past 5 years," she said, pointing to seemingly innocent reception photos. "Look at the backgrounds." I leaned forward, studying images I'd taken myself. There, in the soft focus backgrounds of celebration, shots, I could see them now. Meetings between Jeffrey Harrison and known criminals. Handoffs happening behind dance floors. Suspicious packages being exchanged during toasts. "Your photography studio was more valuable to them than you knew," Agent Martinez explained. "High-end weddings, society events, perfect cover for their meetings. They weren't just using your house as a business address. They were using your legitimate access to Seattle's elite social circles." My hands trembled as I flipped through years of photographs. All this time, I was accidentally documenting their crimes? Not just documenting, providing them access. Think about it. A wedding photographer is invisible at these events. You can go anywhere, photograph anything, and no one questions your presence. Lisa, who'd been sitting quietly in the corner taking notes, suddenly sat up straight. That's why they were so desperate to control Rachel's business. It wasn't just about the property. They needed to control what happened to these photographs. Tom, who'd been cooperating with the FBI since the raid, walked in with another agent. His face was drawn, but there was a determination in his eyes I'd never seen before. "There's more," he said. "I've been going through the family records. The photography studio wasn't their only front. Remember that arts foundation my mother ran? The one that funded local artists?" I nodded. Eleanor had always made a big show of supporting Seattle's art scene. "It was all a money laundering operation," Tom continued. "They'd buy artwork at inflated prices, cycling dirty money through legitimate galleries. That's why they wanted control of your wedding photography business. They were planning to expand their art scheme into photography." Agent Martinez pulled out more documents. "We've uncovered at least 15 businesses in Seattle that the Harrisons have either taken over or attempted to control for their operations. Art galleries, real estate firms, even restaurants. All legitimate businesses that they twisted into fronts for their criminal enterprise." "But here's what I don't understand," I said. "Why go through all this trouble to frame me? Why not just kill me like they threatened to do to Tom?" "Because dead photographers raise questions," Sandra Kim said, walking in with her press credentials hanging around her neck. The FBI had granted her exclusive access in exchange for her cooperation. "Disgraced ones make perfect scapegoats. If they could pin their whole operation on you, they'd have a perfect explanation for any evidence that might surface." Lisa's phone buzzed. She read the message and let out a low whistle. The Seattle Times just published their exposé, "Harrison Family Empire, A Century of Crime Behind Seattle's Elite Facade." It's already going viral. I pulled up the article on my phone. There it was, the whole sordid story laid bare. The real estate fraud, the money laundering, the art scheme, the framed innocent people. And at the center of it all, my story. The photographer who accidentally documented it all and then brought it crashing down. "Ms. Chen," Agent Martinez said, "we need to talk about protection. The Harrisons may be in custody, but their associates aren't. Vincent Calabrese is still at large, and he's not known for forgiveness." "I can help with that," Tom said. "I know all their connections, all their hidden properties. Places they'd use to hide, people they'd turn to." I looked at my ex-husband. really looked at him. The entitled Harrison air was gone, replaced by someone who seemed genuinely determined to make amends. "Why are you doing this, Tom?" "Really?" He met my gaze steadily. "Because I watched them destroy people my whole life. Because I was too weak to stop it before. Because—" he paused. "Because you deserved better than what I, did to you." Sandra was taking notes, her reporter's instincts clearly firing. "This goes beyond Seattle, doesn't it? How far does the Harrison network extend?" Agent Martinez spread out a map. Red pins marked cities across the country, each representing a Harrison connection or operation. "We're coordinating with offices in 12 cities. This investigation is going federal. The Harrisons aren't just a Seattle crime family. They're part of a national network of white-collar crime and money laundering. And to think," Lisa said, "it all started because they got greedy about one house in Queen Anne." I shook my head. "No, it started because they underestimated the wrong person. They thought I'd be an easy target, the immigrant's daughter they could bully and frame. They never expected me to fight back." Agent Martinez's phone rang. As she answered it, her expression turned grave. "We need to move. Now. Calabrese's people were just spotted in the building." "The safe house is ready," another agent said, already moving toward the door. As we were quickly ushered out through a secure exit, I caught a glimpse of men in suits being tackled by federal agents in the lobby. The war wasn't over. It was just moving to a different battlefield. "Rachel," Tom called as we were separated into different vehicles. "I know it doesn't make up for anything, but I'm proud of you. For standing up to them. For being stronger than I ever was." I didn't have time to respond before we were whisked away into armored SUVs. As we sped through Seattle's streets toward an unknown safe location, I thought about how much had changed. I'd fought to keep my house, only to discover I was sitting on evidence of one of the biggest criminal conspiracies in Seattle's history. "Hey," Lisa said softly from beside me. "You okay?" I watched my city slide past the bulletproof windows. "Ask me when this is all over. When every person the Harrisons hurt gets justice. That could take years." "Then I guess we better get comfortable," I said, pulling out my camera. "Because I'm not stopping until the whole truth comes out. Every last frame of it." The SUV turned onto the freeway, heading north. Behind us, Seattle's skyline gleamed in the distance, its glossy surface hiding countless secrets still waiting to be exposed. But that's the thing about photographs. They don't just capture light and shadow. They capture truth. And I had years of truth stored in my archives, waiting to be brought into focus. The safe house turned out to be a converted lighthouse on the San Juan Islands, about as far from Seattle's urban sprawl as you could get while still being in Washington state. From my bedroom window, I watched waves crash against rocky shores as Agent Martinez unfolded a laptop, pulling up surveillance footage from across the country. "In the last 24 hours, we've raided 17 Harrison-connected properties," she said, cycling through images of FBI teams breaching luxury homes and offices. "What we're finding? It's beyond anything we imagined." Lisa spread documents across the weathered kitchen table, old photographs, newspaper clippings, property, records dating back to the 1920s. The Harrison family's criminal enterprise didn't start with Eleanor and Jeffrey. "Look at this." She pointed to a yellowed newspaper from 1947. "Harrison Shipping investigated for suspicious cargo." Another from 1963. "Harrison real estate deal." Raises questions. And more recently, from 1989. Harrison Foundation art acquisition values disputed. 3 generations of white-collar crime, Sandra Kim mused, taking photographs of the documents. Each generation getting more sophisticated, more embedded in legitimate business. Tom sat in the corner, looking haunted as he went through family, photos. All those family stories about our entrepreneurial spirit, our business acumen, they were just sanitized versions of criminal operations. Agent Martinez pulled up another screen. We found this in Jeffrey Harrison's private server. It's a list of every business they've infiltrated, every person they've framed or threatened. Rachel, your name was just the latest addition. The list scrolled endlessly. Restaurants, galleries, real estate firms, construction companies. Next, to each business was a status: acquired, pending, or chillingly neutralized. Look at this entry from 2019, Lisa pointed. Maria Delgado Photography. I felt a chill. Maria Delgado? I knew her. She was one of Seattle's top quinceañera photographers. She lost everything in a scandal about undocumented workers. The Harrisons set her up, Agent Martinez confirmed. They were systematically targeting successful immigrant business owners, people who'd built something valuable but might be vulnerable to certain types of accusations. A notification popped up on the laptop, breaking news from Seattle. The headline made my blood run cold. Vincent Calabrese found dead in Bellevue Mansion. It's starting, Tom said quietly. The Harrison network is cutting ties, eliminating loose ends. Calabrese knew too much. Sandra was already on her phone, talking to her editor. The Times is running a special investigation. We're calling it The Harrison Legacy, Crime, Art, and Seattle's Dark Money. People need to know the truth. Not just about the crimes, I added, pulling out my camera's memory cards. About the victims. Maria Delgado, all the others they destroyed. Their stories need to be told. Agent Martinez nodded. That's why we brought you here. You're not just a witness anymore, Rachel. You're going to help us unravel their whole operation. Those wedding photos, society events. They're evidence of years of criminal activity. I started sorting through my digital archives, seeing familiar photos with new eyes. There was Jeffrey Harrison in the background of the Peterson wedding, passing an envelope to a known drug trafficker. Eleanor at the Art Museum Gala, having a suspicious conversation with a judge who later ruled in their favor on a real estate dispute. They got sloppy, Lisa observed. They never thought anyone would look closely at wedding photos. No, Tom corrected. They got arrogant. They thought they were untouchable. A Coast Guard helicopter thundered overhead, part of our protection detail. On the mainland, the story was exploding. More victims were coming forward, more connections being uncovered. Rachel, Agent Martinez said, we need you to do something that might be difficult. We want you to reach out to other photographers. In Seattle, there might be more evidence in their archives. A network of accidental documentation, Sandra mused. Society photographers as unwitting witnesses. I thought about my colleagues, other photographers who specialized in Seattle's elite social events. How many of us had unknowingly captured evidence of crimes? How many suspicious moments had we dismissed as unimportant? I'll do it, I said. But not just photographers, caterers, event planners, venue managers, everyone who works these high society events. We see everything because the rich treat us like we're invisible. Lisa was already drafting a legal strategy. We can create a secure way for people to submit images and information, a digital clearinghouse for evidence. The Harrisons aren't the only family like this in Seattle, Tom added. There are others, operating the same way, using art, real estate, and legitimate businesses to hide their activities. A text notification lit up my phone, an unknown number. You've opened Pandora's box. Hope you're ready for what comes out. Agent Martinez immediately began tracing the number, but I already knew it wouldn't lead anywhere. This was just the beginning. By exposing the Harrisons, we'd threatened an entire ecosystem of white-collar crime. Look at this, Sandra called, from her laptop. She'd been analyzing financial records from the Harrison Foundation. Every major art purchase they made in the last decade corresponds with a suspicious deposit from an offshore account. They were using art to clean dirty money, Tom explained. Buy a painting for $50,000, officially appraise it for $500,000, sell it to a shell company they control. Clean money, plus a tax write-off. And my wedding photography business would have been their next evolution, I realized. High-end wedding. Packages paid in cash. The perfect laundering operation. The sun was setting over the Pacific, painting the lighthouse in shades of gold and crimson. In Seattle, the story was still unfolding. But here, surrounded by evidence of decades of crime, I finally understood what I was really fighting for. This wasn't just about my house anymore. It was about exposing a system that had preyed on people like me, immigrants, small business owners, people who'd built something valuable through hard work only to have it stolen by those born into power and privilege. They thought they could bury us, I said, looking at the growing evidence of their crimes. They never expected us to grow. Agent Martinez closed her laptop. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start taking apart their empire piece by piece, photo by photo, truth by truth. In the gathering darkness, the lighthouse beam swept across the water, a steady rhythm of illumination and shadow. Like a camera's shutter, capturing moments of truth in the darkness. And like my camera, it would keep shining, keep revealing, until all the shadows were exposed. Content warning. The next 2 weeks in the lighthouse became a masterclass in untangling decades of corruption. While Agent Martinez coordinated raids across the country, I worked with a team of forensic accountants to analyze every society photo I'd ever taken. But nothing prepared us for what we discovered on day 15. Rachel? Tom called from his makeshift office in the lighthouse keeper's quarters. You need to see this. He had been going through old family albums, not the polished ones that sat on coffee tables, but forgotten boxes from the Harrison estate's attic. What he spread before me now made my stomach turn. These were taken in 1985, he said, pointing to a series of Polaroids. Look familiar? The photos showed a much younger Jeffrey Harrison standing in front of a building that made my heart stop. My house. But this was decades before I bought it. That's impossible, I whispered. I purchased that house from the Wilson family in 2008. Lisa, who had been reviewing property records, suddenly sat up straight. The Wilsons never owned that house. Look at this chain of title. She pulled up documents on her laptop. It's been owned by Harrison Shell Companies since 1985, passing through different fake owners. Rachel, they sold you a house they already owned. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. They've been planning this for almost 40 years? But why? Sandra Kim, who had been silently observing from the corner, spoke up. Because of what's underneath it. She spread out old city planning maps from the 1920s. Your house sits on top of one of Seattle's oldest bootlegging tunnels. During Prohibition, it was a major smuggling route. The Harrison family built their initial fortune running illegal liquor through those tunnels. The house was their original base of operations, Tom added, his voice hollow. When Seattle started cracking down on organized crime in the 80s, they needed to distance themselves from it. So they created a complex chain of fake owners. Agent Martinez burst in, her face flushed with excitement. We just found something in the tunnels. My team in Seattle has been searching them based on the old maps. There's a room down there, sealed off since the 80s. You're not going to believe what's inside. She pulled up photos on her tablet. The hidden room was a time capsule, old. Ledgers, photographs, and most importantly, a film reel labeled Insurance 1947-1985. We're digitizing it now, she said. But from what we can see, it's footage of meetings between Harrison family members and various criminal organizations. They recorded everything as leverage. That's why they needed my house back, I realized. They knew that evidence was down, there. When the FBI investigation started getting close, they needed to control the property to make sure no one found that room, Lisa finished. But they couldn't just buy it outright without raising suspicions. So they set up an elaborate plan, Sandra continued. Get their son to marry the owner, then create a situation where they could legally seize control. They probably never expected you to fight back so hard. Tom looked sick. My whole marriage. It was just part of their plan? Not all of it, I said softly. They might have arranged our meeting, but what happened after was real, at least for me. Agent Martinez's phone buzzed. The film's been digitized. They're sending it now. We gathered around her laptop as the grainy footage began to play. There was Jeffrey Harrison's father making deals with known criminals, Eleanor's father-in-law discussing money laundering operations, decades of criminal conspiracy preserved on celluloid. This isn't just evidence against the Harrisons, Agent Martinez said. This implicates some of Seattle's most prominent families. Look at these faces: judges, politicians, business leaders. They were all part of it. Sandra was frantically taking notes. This goes beyond organized crime. This is about how Seattle's entire power structure was built on illegal money. And my house was at the center of it all, I mused. A literal foundation of corruption. Lisa's phone chimed with a news alert. Eleanor's requesting a deal. She's offering to testify against the other families. She's trying to save herself by burning everyone else, Tom said bitterly. Classic Harrison move. Agent Martinez stood up. We need to move fast. Once this evidence goes public, a lot of powerful people are going to panic. Rachel, we're moving you to a different location. No, I said firmly. I'm tired of hiding. It's time to use their own tactics against them. I pulled out my camera. They used photography as a cover for their crimes? Let's use it to expose them. Sandra, how quickly can you organize a gallery show? A gallery show? Tom looked confused. Think about it, I explained. All those society photos I took, but this time with detailed captions explaining what's really happening in each image. Plus the historical evidence, the tunnel photographs, everything. Let's show Seattle what's really been happening at their elite social events. Sandra's eyes lit up. A multimedia exposé. The dark room, Seattle's criminal underground exposed through the lens. It's dangerous, Agent Martinez warned. You'll be putting yourself in the spotlight. I've been in their crosshairs for months, I countered. At least this way, we control the narrative. And if something happens to me, the evidence is already public. Lisa was already drafting press releases. We can coordinate with the FBI's public announcement of the investigation, make it impossible to suppress. Use their own social networks against them, Tom added. Every charity board member, every arts patron, they'll all have to see themselves in those photos. As we planned into the night, I felt a shift in the air. The lighthouse beam swept across the water, regular as a metronome, marking the moment when defense became attack. The Harrisons had tried to use my photography business to hide their crimes. Instead, it would become the lens through which their entire criminal empire was exposed. Tomorrow, I said, watching the beam slice through the darkness. We start curating the truth. The others nodded, understanding what was at stake. This wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about rewriting Seattle's history, one photograph at a time. The Seattle Museum of History's Grand Hall had never seen an exhibition quite like this. Above the entrance, a banner read, Exposed. Seattle's Hidden Dynasty, a photographic journey through organized crime. The line of people waiting to enter stretched around the block, a mix of journalists, law enforcement, and stunned socialites. Inside, my photographs lined the walls, not in their original wedding and event context, but reorganized to tell a very different story. Each image was accompanied by detailed annotations, FBI documentation, and historical records. Look at their faces, Sandra whispered, watching Seattle's elite as they recognized themselves in the photos. They're realizing every social event they attended is now evidence. The exhibition was organized chronologically, starting with the bootlegging-era photographs we'd discovered in the tunnel room. Black and white images showed the Harrison family's rise to power, each generation's crimes documented in haunting detail. Then came my section, Years of high society events recontextualized as crime scenes. A senator accepting an envelope during a charity gala. A judge meeting with Jeffrey Harrison in the background of a wedding reception. Eleanor Harrison discussing art acquisitions with known money launderers at a museum fundraiser. Mrs. Rothschild just fainted, Lisa noted, watching a prominent society matron being helped to a bench. I suppose seeing proof that her family's art collection was purchased with drug money was too much for her. Agent Martinez moved through the crowd with her team, watching for any suspicious reactions. We'd decided to make the exhibition's opening a trap, monitoring who came, who left quickly, who made phone calls. 3 known Harrison associates have already tried to leave the country, she murmured as she passed me. Airport security picked them up. The centerpiece of the exhibition was a full-scale model of the tunnel system beneath my house, complete with restored film footage playing on the walls. Visitors walked through the recreated bootlegging route, experiencing how Seattle's criminal empire had literally operated underground. Rachel. A quiet voice behind me made me turn. It was Amber, Tom's former girlfriend, looking nervous but determined. I need to show you something. She led me to a quiet corner and pulled out her phone. I've been teaching at a new yoga studio in Bellevue. Look who's been attending my 6 a.m. class. The security footage showed Vincent Calabresi's daughter, Marina, attending yoga sessions 3 times a week, but she wasn't there for exercise. Watch her gym bag, Amber pointed. She always leaves it in the same spot and different people come by to exchange bags when she's in class. I think they're still moving money, even with Vincent dead. I immediately texted Agent Martinez, who appeared within seconds. We've been tracking Marina Calabresi, but hadn't identified her new drop point. This is exactly what we needed. Why are you showing us this? I asked Amber. She straightened her shoulders. Because you were right to fight back. The Harrisons, the Calabresis. They think they own this city. They think they can use people like me, like you, as pawns in their games. I'm done being a pawn. Across the room, Tom was giving an interview to a national news network, publicly denouncing his family's crimes. The Harrison heir, turning state's evidence, was too juicy a story for the media to resist. Mr. Harrison, a reporter called out, is it true that your family arranged your marriage to Rachel Chen as part of their criminal enterprise? Before Tom could answer, I stepped in. Our marriage was real, I said firmly. The Harrisons tried to use it for their purposes, but they didn't create the feelings between us. They just destroyed them with their lies. The exhibition's most powerful section was the victim's wall, photographs and stories of all the people the Harrisons had destroyed over the years. Maria Delgado was there, along with dozens of others whose businesses and lives had been ruined to protect the Harrison empire. We're getting calls from other cities, Sandra told me excitedly. Similar families, similar patterns. Seattle isn't unique. This is happening everywhere. Ms. Chen, another reporter pushed forward. What made you decide to fight back instead of taking the Harrisons' offer? I looked around the exhibition hall at the evidence of decades of corruption displayed on the walls. Because truth matters. Because you can't build real success on a foundation of lies. And because sometimes the only way to fight darkness is to shine a light directly on it. Suddenly, the museum's lights flickered. Agent Martinez's hand went to her weapon as her team moved to secure the exits. But it wasn't an attack. It was Jeffrey Harrison's private server, which we'd set up to display its contents on the museum's screens, receiving new information. Someone's uploading files, Lisa called out, rushing to a monitor. Massive amounts of data, financial records, photographs, videos. Eleanor Harrison's voice cut through the crowd's murmur. She stood in the entrance, flanked by federal agents, her designer suit replaced by prison orange. If I'm going down, she announced, her voice carrying across the stunned silence, I'm not going alone. That server now has evidence of every deal, every crime, every corrupt official we ever worked with. 40 years of Seattle's dirty secrets. The The crowd erupted in chaos. People rushed to the screens, searching for their names, their families' secrets. Others ran for the exits, phones already out to warn their associates. "This wasn't part of her deal," Agent Martinez said grimly. "She's trying to create so much chaos that the real evidence gets lost in the noise." But Eleanor had underestimated us again. Lisa was already coordinating with a team of forensic accountants, sorting the real evidence from the distractions. Sandra had her journalism team fact-checking every new revelation. And me? I raised my camera, capturing the moment Seattle's power structure realized their dynasty of secrets was crumbling. "You think this changes anything?" Eleanor called out as agents led her away. "There will always be families like us. There will always be secrets." "You're right," I replied, loud enough for everyone to hear. "But there will also always be people willing to expose those secrets. People with cameras, with evidence, with truth." The exhibition lights came back up, illuminating decades of crime captured through my lens. Outside, more people were arriving, drawn by breaking news alerts about Eleanor's data dump. Seattle's dynasty of darkness was falling. And through the viewfinder of my camera, I was documenting every moment of its collapse. 1 year later, I stood in front of my house, my actual house, for the first time in months. The FBI had finally cleared it as a crime scene, though the Historical Preservation Society had already designated the property as a landmark, due to its significance in exposing Seattle's criminal underground. The morning fog rolled off Puget, sound as I turned my key in the lock. The home studio, once filled with wedding portraits and engagement photos, had been transformed. Where happy couples once posed, wall-sized photographs now documented the fall of Seattle's criminal elite. My first solo exhibition, Through the Lens of Truth, had toured nationally, exposing similar corruption in cities across America. "Quite a change from wedding photography," remarked Agent Martinez, who'd accompanied me for this final inspection. She gestured to the wall of headlines. "Harrison Empire Falls, 127 Indictments, Seattle's Criminal Dynasty Exposed, Art World, Scandal Leads to International Arrests." "Sometimes I miss the weddings," I admitted, running my hand along my old editing desk. "The joy, the celebrations. But this," I gestured to the evidence wall. "This is more important." My phone buzzed, a text from Tom. He'd been relocated to witness protection after his testimony had helped convict not just the Harrison family, but 3 federal judges and a senator. His last message read, "Dad took the plea deal. It's finally over." But it wasn't over, not really. The Harrison case had triggered a nationwide reckoning. Sandra's exposé had inspired journalists in other cities to investigate their own old money families. Lisa had started a legal foundation helping victims of white-collar crime reclaim their stolen businesses. "Speaking of changes," Agent Martinez said, pulling out a folder, "the Bureau has a proposal for you." Inside was an official job offer. Special Consultant, FBI Art Crimes Division. They wanted me to help investigate other cases where legitimate businesses were being used to hide criminal enterprises. "You want me to keep taking pictures?" I asked, surprised. "We want you to keep seeing what others miss," she corrected. "Your eye for detail, your understanding of how the wealthy operate, it's invaluable." A knock at the door interrupted us. Maya Rodriguez, my former assistant turned key witness, stood there with a group of photography students. "Ready for the tour?" she asked. My house had become a teaching tool, showing aspiring photographers how to recognize and document suspicious activities without putting themselves at risk. "Ms. Chen," one student called out, "is it true you're starting a national database of event photography to track criminal organizations?" I nodded. "Project Viewfinder. We're creating a secure platform where photographers can cross-reference their society event photos with known criminal associates. Turns out wedding photographers have been accidentally documenting organized crime for decades." The students filed through the house, taking notes as Maya explained how seemingly innocent background details could be evidence of criminal activity. In the kitchen, my kitchen, a new set of photographs showed the transformation of the space. No longer just a home, it was now a living museum of how one person's stand against corruption had changed an entire city. Upstairs, in what used to be my bedroom, we'd recreated the evidence wall that helped break the case. Personal photos of the Harrisons at social events, carefully annotated to show their criminal connections. The fake documents they'd planted to frame me. The real evidence that had eventually exposed them. The tunnels are the most requested part of the tour, Maya told the students as we descended into the basement. The bootlegging passages had been preserved, with interactive displays explaining their role in Seattle's criminal history. Remember, I told the students, the real lesson here isn't just about photography or crime, it's about power and how it operates in plain sight. The Harrisons didn't hide in shadows, they hid in spotlight, using their social status as camouflage. Later, that evening, after everyone had left, I sat alone in my old studio. The space felt different now, heavier with history, but also somehow more purposeful. My camera bag sat ready by the door, packed for my first official FBI consultation tomorrow. Lisa called as I was locking up. Eleanor's appeal was denied, she reported. She'll serve her full sentence. Jeffrey, too. The Harrison Empire is officially dead. And the house? I asked. The Historical Society's protection is permanent. No developer can ever touch it now. Your home is safe. And more importantly, it's yours again. I stepped out onto my porch, watching the sunset paint Seattle's skyline in shades of gold and purple. The city felt different now, its glossy surface cracked to reveal the truth beneath. But from those cracks, something new was growing. Transparency, accountability, change. My phone buzzed again. A news alert about another family of legitimate business owners being investigated in Boston. The attached photo showed a society, wedding, and in the background, suspicious meetings caught by an unsuspecting photographer. I smiled, picking up my camera. The light was perfect for photography, and somewhere in this city, another story was waiting to be exposed. The Harrisons had taught me that every picture tells a story. But now I knew that sometimes the real story was hiding in the background, waiting for someone brave enough to bring it into focus. Tomorrow, I would start my new role, helping other photographers recognize what I had learned to see. But tonight, I stood in front of my house, my fortress of truth, and took one last photograph. Not of the building itself, but of its shadow stretching across the garden, long and dark like the secrets it had contained, yet clearly defined, in the evening light, because that's what photography is really about, not just capturing light, but understanding shadows. And I had learned to see both, to expose what needed exposing and to protect what needed protecting. The Harrison dynasty had fallen, but their legacy lived on as a warning. No empire built on lies can stand forever, not when there are people willing to focus their lens on the truth. I locked my front door one final time, ready to begin the next chapter. My camera hung at my side, not just a tool of my trade now, but a weapon of justice. The sun set on Seattle, and somewhere in the gathering darkness, another story waited to be illuminated. Sometimes the biggest truths are captured in the smallest details, frozen in time by someone who knows exactly where to point the lens. That's what I do now. I find the truth in the shadows, one frame at a time. And my house. It stands as a testament to what one person can reveal when they refuse to look away, when they keep their focus sharp and their lens clear, no matter what pressure comes to bear. The light faded, but I wasn't afraid of the dark anymore. After all, that's where the most important stories often hide, waiting for someone to bring them into the light. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.